Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I left for a business trip that promised several days away from the daily grind, expecting nothing more than a brief respite from the routine. The trip was a welcome distraction, filled with long drives, quiet moments by the lake, and the occasional lively dinner with colleagues. But when I returned home, something felt off. The house, once a sanctuary of familiar routines, now carried a subtle air of disarray that I couldn't immediately place. I noticed that some of Vanessa's favorite motivational quotes, which used to be neatly framed in our living room, were now slightly askew, as if hastily rearranged. At first, I attributed it to the hurried pace of our mornings, but a lingering unease settled in my chest. The silence in the hallway felt heavier than usual, and even the smell of fresh laundry was tinged with a note of unfamiliar perfume. One evening, as I sat on the porch nursing a cup of coffee and trying to piece together the small inconsistencies, Vanessa emerged from the house with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Hey, Eric," she said in a tone that was too chipper for the subdued weather. "I'm just heading out for my usual session." Her casual remark sent a jolt of curiosity through me. I knew her routine well. She always said she had extra workouts and fitness sessions, but this time something in her tone made me wonder if there was more behind those words. Over the next few days, I watched her from the periphery as she left at odd hours, sometimes disappearing for longer periods than she'd ever mentioned before. I began to notice an unfamiliar set of receipts tucked under a pile of her workout plans and some new gym bags that didn't match our usual purchases. It wasn't that I suspected her outright, but each small detail chipped away at the comfortable facade we had built together. At one parent-teacher meeting at our daughter's school, I observed her animated conversation with a charismatic stranger who introduced himself as a friend of one of the teachers. He was polite, his manner unassuming, but something in the way Vanessa laughed at his jokes, the secretive glances they exchanged, hinted at an intimacy that was out of place. I brushed off the feeling, convincing myself that perhaps it was nothing more than a misunderstanding, a harmless connection that I was misinterpreting in my absence. Yet, the seed of doubt had been planted. Every evening thereafter, as I returned home early from work, I kept a careful eye on the subtle changes. The way Vanessa's smile faltered when she thought I wasn't looking, the slight delay in her greetings, and the way she would immediately tuck her phone away whenever I entered the room. I even found a small, expensive gift, a sleek set of accessories meant for a man, hastily hidden behind a stack of magazines on the coffee table. It was clear that someone else had been receiving tokens of affection, and the evidence was as perplexing as it was unsettling. My mind churned with questions. Could it be that my intuition had been right all along? Had I been living with a stranger in the guise of the wife I knew? I spent long hours reviewing every detail, trying to connect the dots while wrestling with the fear of discovering a truth I wasn't sure I could bear. In quiet moments, I almost convinced myself that maybe these were innocent coincidences, misplaced items, or simple oversights. But deep down, a voice insisted that there was more than met the eye. Late one evening, as I prepared dinner and my thoughts drifted to the mysterious gift I had found, a knock on the door startled me. Opening it, I found our neighbor, Mark, who I had known for years as a friendly and trustworthy man. He mentioned casually that he had seen Vanessa leaving the gym with a man who wasn't one of her regular acquaintances, a comment that left a bitter taste in my mouth. Though I knew Mark's words might have been influenced by gossip, his sincerity only deepened my growing unease. I thanked him and closed the door, my mind racing with possibilities that I had never wanted to consider. As I sat back down, the quiet hum of the refrigerator seemed to echo the doubts swirling within me, and I resolved that I needed to watch, listen, and document every small inconsistency until the truth revealed itself. I returned home late one evening after a long day at work, expecting nothing more than the usual quiet routine, but as I stepped into the living room, a small, elegantly wrapped box caught my eye on the coffee table, a place it surely hadn't belonged before. My pulse quickened as I reached for it, curiosity mingling with a growing unease. Unwrapping the package carefully, I discovered a set of finely crafted leather-bound cufflinks. Their design sleek and understated, clearly a gift intended for someone who appreciated refined accessories. The discovery struck me like a bolt. These cufflinks were far too exquisite for a modest life, and, more importantly, they weren't meant for me. In the back of my mind, I recalled subtle hints from the past few weeks. Vanessa's increasing absences under the guise of late-night workouts, and her nonchalant dismissals when I asked about her extra time at the gym. Instead of launching into an angry confrontation immediately, I decided to turn this discovery into an opportunity, a chance to expose the deception without alerting her. That night, while Vanessa was sound asleep, I retrieved the cufflinks and, with a mix of mischief and calculated resolve, replaced them with an outrageously garish pair I had bought online. A pair so absurd in design that anyone who saw them would instantly know they were a far cry from luxury. I rewrapped the replacement in a similar elegant box and placed it back exactly where I found the original. The next morning, as Vanessa prepared for her day, I casually mentioned, "I found a box on the table last night. It seems like it was a gift for someone." She glanced briefly at the box, a flash of confusion in her eyes before she brushed it off with a light laugh. "Oh, that must be a mistake," she said breezily, her tone dismissive as if the matter were trivial. Yet I noted that slight hesitation in her expression, a crack in her practiced mask of nonchalance. Throughout that day, I kept my observations discreet. I watched how she handled phone calls with an almost furtive smile, how she quickly tucked her phone away when I walked in, and even how her voice occasionally faltered when topics of new accessories or gifts were mentioned. I began jotting down every small detail in a hidden journal, each note a piece of a puzzle that, I feared, might reveal more than I was ready to confront. My mind churned with questions. Who was this gift truly meant for? How long had this secret been hidden behind her mundane excuses? While my emotions stirred with a quiet mix of indignation and intrigue, I chose not to escalate the situation immediately. Instead, I resolved to monitor her behavior more closely and gather further evidence before making any rash decisions. I set up a discreet schedule in my mind, observing her routine both when she was alone and in public settings, and even made a habit of casually glancing at her phone when she wasn't paying attention. In the solitude of my study that night, as rain tapped softly against the window, I reviewed the journal entries I had made over the past few days. Each note, each minor discrepancy, added layers to the mystery. The garish cufflinks I'd left in place became a silent symbol, a trigger that I hoped would eventually force her hand, revealing the truth behind her late-night absences. I wasn't ready to confront her just yet. I needed more proof, a pattern that would confirm my worst suspicions without a shadow of doubt. "Vanessa, have you noticed anything unusual lately?" I asked one evening over dinner, attempting to sound casual despite the storm of thoughts swirling inside me. She shrugged, forcing a smile. "Unusual? Not really, Eric. Why do you ask?" "Just a thought." I replied evenly, my eyes steady but unreadable, keeping my tone light while silently vowing to dig deeper into the mystery. Her quick, clipped response, and the way she immediately changed the subject, left me with more questions than answers. As I closed my journal that night, I made a silent vow to continue observing every detail, every subtle shift in her routine. The replacement cufflinks, with their ridiculous design hidden away in a drawer, became a symbol of my quiet rebellion, a small act of mischief that might one day force the truth into the light. I began to notice subtle signs that something wasn't quite right with Vanessa's behavior. Over the next several days, my mind became a battleground of suspicion and doubt. Every time she excused herself from a family dinner with vague reasons like, "I need to prepare for tomorrow's workout," or "I have an extra training session scheduled," I felt my unease mounting. I started to meticulously note these discrepancies in a small notebook, a habit I'd never thought I'd adopt. One evening, while I was reviewing my notes, I recalled the garish cufflinks I had replaced in the package, a prank intended to catch her off guard. Yet, instead of the anticipated confrontation, the incident left me with more questions than answers. The cufflinks were not mentioned again by Vanessa. and she appeared more flustered than confrontational when I casually remarked, "It's odd to see a package like that on our table, isn't it?" Her quick smile and evasive comment about mistaken deliveries did little to quiet my growing anxiety. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I started casually observing her routine with an almost clinical detachment. I noticed that on nights she claimed to be at the gym for extra training sessions, she sometimes returned later than usual, her phone screen lighting up with notifications that she quickly hid when I passed by. My heart pounded as I wrestled with conflicting thoughts. Was it possible that my suspicions were simply a product of my overactive imagination, or was there a deeper betrayal at play? I resolved to confront her, but not with anger, rather with measured curiosity. One quiet evening, after dinner, I sat down in our living room with her, my tone calm but direct. "Vanessa, I've noticed you've been out later than usual on workout nights, and your phone always seems to be busy. Is there something you'd like to tell me?" I asked, my voice steady, though every word was laced with the weight of my mounting suspicions. Vanessa's eyes flickered briefly, and she hesitated before replying, "Eric, I'm just really dedicated to my fitness goals and my classes. You know how important it is to push yourself. There's nothing more to it than that." Her answer, while plausible, did nothing to soothe the doubts swirling in my mind. The following day, I decided to drop in at the gym, pretending to be a new client interested in joining a training session. As I waited in the reception area, I struck up a conversation with one of the staff members about the schedule. "So, is Vanessa one of the trainers here?" I inquired casually. The staff member gave me a puzzled look and replied, "No, she's a regular member here. She comes in quite a bit for training sessions." The response sent a ripple of confusion through me. If Vanessa were simply a dedicated fitness enthusiast, why had her schedule been so erratic? As I mulled over this information, I began cross-referencing her claimed schedule with what I had observed at home. Every detail seemed to conflict just slightly. An extra hour here, a missing phone call there, enough to fan the flames of suspicion, but not enough to conclusively prove infidelity. In a moment of frustration, I confided in my best friend at a local cafe. "I can't shake the feeling that something's off. I see her coming home late, and she's always secretive with her phone. I'm trying to tell myself it's just her passion for fitness, but it feels like there's more to it." My friend listened intently, then offered, "Maybe you're reading too much into it, Eric. People get caught up in their routines. But if it bothers you this much, perhaps you should try a different approach before jumping to conclusions." His words lingered with me as I returned home that night. I spent hours re-examining my notes, trying to piece together a coherent picture from the scattered clues. It was then that I realized the possibility that my suspicions might be unfounded, mere coincidences amplified by my own fears. By the end of the week, the evidence remained ambiguous. I had my doubts, but I also had no concrete proof to justify an explosive confrontation. In that moment, I made the difficult decision to hold off on any drastic actions and to give Vanessa the benefit of the doubt, at least for now. I would continue to observe and gather details, but I resolved to remain calm and avoid letting my emotions dictate my actions. As I closed my notebook that night, I whispered to myself, maybe it's all just a misunderstanding, even as the seed of suspicion still lingered in the back of my mind, waiting for further confirmation. Over the next few days, my suspicions only deepened as I noticed subtle yet unsettling changes in Vanessa's routine. Every morning when she left for her late-night workouts, her departure seemed accompanied by a lingering hesitation in her eyes that I had never seen before. One particular evening, as I was returning home from work, I caught a glimpse of her hastily shutting the front door, her expression masked by urgency. That night, while reviewing my notes in the study, I found a discrepancy that sent a shiver down my spine. A series of text messages that I'd overlooked before, showing exchanges between Vanessa and someone using an unfamiliar name. The messages were cryptic, referring to new plans and an opportunity, and though they were ambiguous, their timing coincided perfectly with her unexplained absences. My mind raced with questions. Was this another elaborate excuse for her extra time at the gym? Or was there something more sinister behind her sudden distraction? I decided to delve deeper. The following day, I made a casual visit to the local fitness center under the guise of picking up a forgotten water bottle. As I waited near the reception, I couldn't help but notice Vanessa's unusually animated conversation with a staff member about a new training regimen. The way she laughed, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm, was a stark contrast to her recent reserved demeanor. Unable to contain my curiosity, I approached and asked politely, "Excuse me, I heard Vanessa mentioning a new workout plan. Is she involved in a special program here?" The receptionist's smile was polite yet evasive. "Oh, she's just really dedicated. She loves pushing her limits, that's all," she replied, clearly deflecting any deeper inquiry. Her answer did little to ease my anxiety. I left the center with more questions than answers. Later that evening, while I sat alone in our quiet living room, I scrolled through our shared calendar on my phone. There, intermingled with routine events, were entries marked extended training session on days that didn't match Vanessa's usual schedule. I jotted down the dates, feeling a growing certainty that these sessions were more than just a passion for fitness. My mind drifted back to the text messages, the cryptic notes that mentioned new plans and an opportunity that now seemed more like code than casual conversation. In a burst of resolve, I decided it was time to confront Vanessa indirectly. The next morning over breakfast, while I sipped my coffee and read the news, I casually remarked, "Vanessa, I notice on the calendar that you have these extra training sessions scheduled. They seem pretty frequent lately." She glanced up from her phone with a quick, practiced smile. "Yes, Eric, I've been taking on some additional sessions to help our community center revamp their fitness program," she replied smoothly, though her tone was too measured, too rehearsed. "That sounds exciting," I said, though my voice held a trace of skepticism. "It's just that, well, it seems like there's a lot more to it these days." She laughed lightly, a sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, don't be overthinking it. I'm just passionate about what I do." Her words, meant to dismiss my concerns, only fueled my determination. That afternoon, while organizing the files in our study, I discovered another oddity, a receipt from a high-end nutrition store for an order of premium supplements, dated on one of those extended training days. I couldn't recall ever purchasing such items, and the receipt bore a signature that wasn't mine. My heart pounded as I realized that these supplements were clearly meant for someone with a taste for luxury, not the standard fare of a busy housewife. The mounting evidence now painted a picture that was too consistent to ignore. I spent the rest of the evening reviewing my growing collection of discrepancies, the mismatched schedules, the secret text messages, the unexplained receipts, and all the while, a quiet, steely resolve began to form within me. I made detailed notes in my journal, recording each anomaly with precise times and observations, determined to piece together the puzzle of Vanessa's secret life. As the clock ticked past midnight, I sat back in the dim glow of my desk lamp and whispered to myself, "I'm on the right track, but I need irrefutable proof." In that solitary moment, with the weight of my suspicions pressing heavily on my mind, I vowed to continue my investigation until the truth, whatever it might be, would finally be revealed. I reached a point where every discrepancy and unexplained absence had coalesced into an undeniable conviction that Vanessa was hiding more than just extra workout sessions. My mind was ablaze with restless energy, and I began to obsessively track every minute detail of her routine. Every time she left the house with vague excuses, every hushed phone conversation that ended as soon as I walked in, all of it painted a picture too consistent to dismiss. One particular evening, as I sat in the study reviewing the timeline I had painstakingly assembled, my heart pounded with a mix of anger and determination. I could almost taste the betrayal, and I resolved that it was time to catch her red-handed. I devised a plan to finally confront the truth, even if it meant risking a confrontation that might shatter our fragile normalcy. That night, after dinner, I pretended to retire early and position myself in the dimly lit hallway near our living room, where the muffled sounds of her phone conversations had become a familiar backdrop. I listened intently, my pulse thundering in my ears, straining to catch any hint of her clandestine activities. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours until, at last, I heard her whisper a name that made my stomach twist with a bitter mix of anticipation and dread. The voice on the other end was soft, intimate, and unmistakably excited. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught fragments: session, plans, and then get the keys to the office after hours. My mind raced as I scribbled down every detail in my hidden notebook. The evidence was finally aligning, and I felt the raw surge of anger mingling with a strange relief. I was no longer adrift in a sea of doubts, but anchored by undeniable proof. The next day, I decided to act. I prepared myself to catch Vanessa in the act. I spent the morning double-checking my notes, reviewing every text message and every timestamp until the evidence was a solid chain that could not be broken. That afternoon, while Vanessa insisted on running errands, again, citing a vague need to check on some new equipment for her fitness routine, I seized the opportunity to tail her discreetly. I followed her at a safe distance as she drove through familiar streets and eventually pulled into a parking lot adjacent to a sleek, modern building. My heart raced as I parked my car a few paces away, careful not to alert her to my presence. I crouched behind a row of hedges, my eyes fixed on the entrance. I watched as Vanessa walked briskly toward the building, her posture determined, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. I waited, every sense heightened, until she disappeared inside. I crept forward, my footsteps silent against the pavement, and found a vantage point near a large window overlooking a private office area. The sight that met my eyes confirmed my worst fears. There, in the soft glow of office lights, Vanessa was in deep conversation with a man whose face I couldn't clearly see from this distance, but whose presence was unmistakable in the way he leaned close to her, speaking in low, urgent tones. I strained to hear fragments of their conversation. "Everything's set for tonight," the man said, his voice steady. Vanessa responded with a mixture of excitement and nervousness that sent a chill down my spine. "I know. I'll be there," she whispered, and for the first time, the truth was laid bare before me. In that moment, all the doubts, all the subtle signs, coalesced into a single, searing revelation. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a mix of rage, and a strangely clear sense of resolve. I knew what I had to do next. As I prepared to step away and plan my next move, my phone vibrated softly in my pocket, its screen lighting up with a message that would seal the truth for me forever. My hand trembled as I read it, a message that confirmed the identity of the man and the scheduled time for their next meeting. My heart pounded with the certainty of betrayal, and I realized that I was now standing at the precipice of a confrontation that would forever change the course of our lives. With my evidence and my resolve gathered, I whispered to myself, "Tonight, everything will come to light," as I prepared for the final act that would expose the full extent of Vanessa's deceit. I waited in the dim glow of the early evening, my resolve hardened by the evidence I'd gathered, as I prepared to uncover the truth once and for all. Tonight, I had planned to finally catch Vanessa in the act, to record indisputable proof of the betrayal that had slowly eaten away at our marriage. I positioned myself near the entrance of the gym's private training area, a place she had claimed was solely for her late-night workouts. The cool air outside whispered around me as I adjusted the hidden camera on the side of a lamppost, ensuring that nothing would escape its unblinking gaze. My heart pounded with a mix of controlled anger and grim determination as I retraced the timeline of her absences, every moment leading to this very hour. Soon, the familiar sound of footsteps approached, and I saw Vanessa, clad in her workout gear, slipping quietly through the door. My breath caught as she moved with an air of purpose that belied her usual cheerful demeanor. I followed at a safe distance, my eyes fixed on her every move. In the secluded corridor of the gym, Vanessa paused at a side, door marked "Staff Only," and hesitated for a moment before slipping inside. I pressed my back against the cool wall, every fiber of my being focused on the scene unfolding before me. Through a narrow gap in the door, I peered inside and saw her in a private office, where her posture and hushed conversation revealed more than her earlier excuses ever could. There, standing close to her, was the personal trainer, a man I had come to suspect whose presence confirmed my worst fears. I listened as they exchanged quiet words, their voices low and intimate. "I can't believe how simple it is," the trainer murmured, and Vanessa responded with a soft, almost nervous laugh that chilled me to the core. At that moment, every doubt dissolved into a sharp clarity. This was the truth I had been gathering. I knew I had to capture this, to let the evidence speak for itself, and yet I felt no remorse or hesitation, only a steely resolve that justice would be served. Quietly, I activated my recording device and began to document every detail. Their whispered conversation, the subtle gestures that betrayed their familiarity, even the fleeting look in Vanessa's eyes when she glanced toward the door, as if expecting someone to notice. My recording captured it all, a damning testament to the betrayal that had taken root right under my nose. Then, just as quickly as it had begun, the scene shifted. The trainer reached out to offer Vanessa a neatly folded note, and she accepted it with an almost imperceptible nod, a silent agreement that sealed their complicity. I stayed frozen in my hiding place, my heart pounding, until the two eventually separated, leaving the room one after the other. The door closed softly behind them, and the silence that followed was heavy with the weight of finality. I stepped back slowly, my mind already racing with the next phase of my plan. I knew that confrontation was not enough. I needed to expose this treachery in a way that would leave no room for denial. With the recording secured and every detail imprinted in my memory, I retreated into the night, a cold determination driving my every step. As I drove away from the gym, I whispered to myself, "The truth is mine now, and nothing can undo what's been done." My mind was a whirlwind of strategies for the moment of reckoning, when I would reveal this evidence and finally reclaim the dignity that had been eroded by years of lies. In that instant, the past was left behind, and a future built on unyielding truth beckoned. A future where betrayal would no longer hold sway over my life, and where the cost of deception would be paid in full. I spent days meticulously planning my revenge, every moment of preparation fueled by a cold resolve that left no room for regret. Only a burning determination to expose the betrayal and reclaim my dignity. Late at night, I pored over maps and online directories until I found the perfect location, a massive digital billboard positioned right outside the gym where Vanessa and her trainer held their secret meetings. I envisioned the message flashing in bold, unignorable letters, a public declaration that would shatter the carefully constructed facade she had maintained. In the weeks leading up to this moment, I had assembled every piece of damning evidence, from the recorded conversation in the gym's private office to screenshots of their furtive texts. And now I was ready to unleash it all. I arranged to meet with a trusted technician who specialized in digital advertising. "I need this billboard to display my message for at least 48 hours, I told him in a tone that brooked no argument. He nodded, understanding the gravity of my request. I provided him with the images and text I had carefully selected, a series of clear screenshots accompanied by the stark message, "Meet the gym's real training program." Every detail was intended to leave no doubt about the truth. On the day of the display, I stood before the glowing billboard as the first light of dawn bathed the city in a pale glow. My heart pounded in my chest as the images and words flickered to life, drawing the attention of early commuters and gym-goers alike. I could see curious faces staring up, and a hush seemed to fall over the morning rush as the evidence of Vanessa's betrayal was broadcast for all to see. Later that day, I received calls from gym members and local news outlets. "Is it true?" someone asked over the phone. "Did Vanessa really do what they claim?" The questions echoed the shock I had long suppressed. I felt a grim satisfaction knowing that the truth was finally out in the open, irreversibly altering the narrative. I sat down in my car outside the gym, watching as the digital message cycled through the day, each repetition a reminder that justice had been served. In a brief phone call with a close friend, I said, "I've never felt so liberated. Today, I reclaim my life." His words, simple yet sincere, reinforced the resolve that had guided me through every sleepless night and every secret observation. Meanwhile, The fallout was swift and brutal. Within hours, the gym management announced that the trainer was terminated, citing a breach of conduct and a violation of the establishment's ethical standards. Vanessa's world crumbled further when she was promptly blacklisted by several local fitness centers, a consequence that left her professional reputation in tatters. I knew then that the message on the billboard was more than just words. It was the catalyst for a public reckoning. Later that evening, I received an email from my lawyer confirming that the divorce papers had been filed and that the division of assets was now in my favor. As I read the message, a mixture of relief and finality washed over me. My revenge was not fueled by bitterness, but by the unwavering need to restore truth and integrity to my life. The digital billboard, now fading into the backdrop of the bustling city, stood as a symbol of my transformation, from a man overshadowed by deceit to one who took bold action in the face of betrayal. I took a deep breath and allowed myself a small, satisfied smile. The moment had come, and the truth had been laid bare for everyone to see, leaving no room for denial. I returned home after a long day at work, expecting to find a semblance of normalcy, but the house felt strangely cold and unfamiliar. The digital billboard's revelation had shaken our world to its core, and while I had anticipated the fallout, I hadn't expected Vanessa's reaction. The morning after the public unveiling, I found her in the kitchen, her usual confident posture replaced by a tense, uncertain air. "Eric," she began tentatively, her voice wavering, "I know what happened, and I want to fix things." Her eyes, once so full of assured energy, now darted nervously as she tried to mask her guilt. I leaned against the counter, my arms folded, listening as she pleaded, "I can change, I promise. I made mistakes, but we can work through this. I need you, and I want us to be together." Her words rang hollow in the wake of the digital evidence that had been so brutally exposed. For a long moment, silence stretched between us like a chasm, filled only by the hum of the refrigerator and the soft patter of rain against the window. "Vanessa," I said slowly, "you had your chance to tell me the truth, but you chose deception instead. I don't think I can ever trust you again." She tried to step closer, desperation evident in her voice as she added, "Please, Eric, give me another chance. I'll do whatever it takes. We can start over. Just please don't leave." Her plea was met with a calm, unwavering resolve. "It's not about leaving, Vanessa," I replied, my tone measured yet firm. "It's about reclaiming my life from the lies that have suffocated it for too long. I deserve honesty, and I deserve a partner who respects me enough to be truthful." The tension in the room grew palpable as she struggled to find the right words, her eyes filling with tears that betrayed her true feelings. "I can't go back to the way things were," I continued, "because I've learned that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to restore." As I spoke, I could sense that this was a turning point, a moment where the path diverged irreversibly. Vanessa's face contorted in a mix of anger and heartbreak, and she finally shouted, "So that's it? After everything, you're just going to cast me aside?" Her outburst echoed off the walls, the raw emotion in her voice a stark contrast to the icy clarity that had settled over me. "It's not about casting you aside," I said quietly. "It's about choosing a future where I am not constantly reminded of betrayal. I won't be dragged back into a life defined by lies." She reached out, her hand trembling as it hovered in the air between us, but I stepped back, each step a clear declaration of my decision. "I'm sorry, Vanessa, but this is goodbye," I said, the finality in my words undeniable. The moment was both heartbreaking and liberating. As I walked out of the door, I felt a heavy weight lift from my shoulders, replaced by a burgeoning sense of freedom and hope for a future built on truth and integrity. The rain had stopped, and the soft glow of the afternoon sun bathed the quiet street in gentle light. I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but I also knew that I had reclaimed control over my destiny. Vanessa's desperate attempts to win me back had been nothing more than a last-ditch effort to salvage a relationship that was already beyond repair. In that moment, I vowed to never let deception taint my life again. With a final glance over my shoulder, I closed the door behind me, stepping confidently into a new chapter, one where honesty, self-respect, and a promise of a brighter future would guide my every step. Thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.